That'll teach you to shower.
I'm not pouring.
Hit it. Yeah. Go ahead and hit it.
PJ, congratulations.
PJ, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about? Just tell me something. There's a reason why, and I'll tell you at the meeting. Just make up something. Good. Ready?
We're ready.
Welcome to the Oregon City regular meeting for October the 10th, 2022, and we will open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll call of present council members?
Mr. Davish?
Here.
Mr. Drake?
Here.
Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Walczak?
Here.
Mr. Zale?
Here. Also present at tonight's meeting is Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Major, Clerk of Council Tina Evans, Law Director Luna Zapora, Public Service Director Paul Roman, Chief of Police Brandon Began, Assistant Chief of Police Ryan Spangler, Fire Chief Dennis Hartman, Assistant Fire Chief Mark Mullins, and Acting Finance Director Nick Roman, and Administrative Assistant for Public Service Kelly Wolf. Council, first order of business for this evening will be, since we did not have a committee of the whole meeting last week, we need to include items 160 through 163, 2022 today's agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, any objections? Hearing none, items 160 through 163 will be added to tonight's agenda. We're going to move, we're going to skip over some of the items and go straight to item 163, 2022, which is being presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and City Administrator Joel Major. Mr. Mann.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Council, you are aware that I've notified all of you and to the public that tonight I plan to appoint a new fire chief. During the negotiations for fire chief, we have been adjusting our pay scale for many of our departmental heads to compete with the surrounding communities. And so in the negotiations for a new chief, we did negotiate that new pay scale, and our system here has the fire chief and police chief on the same rate. So this does adjust the pay scale from police chief and fire chief, and the chart is listed at the back. And the new scale starts out at step one, which it starts out at $116.04 a year, and it takes in each step a $2,000 increase. So they would start at step one, and each year take those steps up to the final step of $124,001.02. And because we need to do this first, we cannot appoint an individual to a position that doesn't exist. So I would ask that you do pass this ordinance, and then we would go into the President of Council said he would go to the mayor's report so I could make that appointment. So if there are any questions, I'd sure between myself, Mr. Major, and Mr. Roman, we could answer them. So.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, any questions or comments regarding item 163?
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak?
just a quick question for clarification, because the copy I have here printed in front of me, and I don't see an updated copy. I believe there was an amendment to
Yeah,
163.
correct.
Is that the updated? Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
And just so I could, you originally distributed, we had the law director prosecutor on that scale at one time. And we had made the determination that the law director prosecutor's position would be handled when we do the budget for next year. And it'd be more in scale with Mr. Roman's pay scale. And we thought it was more appropriate to budget a yearly thing, but this we had to do today due to the nature of an appointment today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, any other questions or comments?
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
thank you. I do have a question for the mayor and probably Mr. Major and/or Mr. Roman. Are we planning on adjusting the pay scale for our assistant chiefs as well?
We are actually looking at all the positions, and that's why we thought it was more appropriate to do it when we're setting up our budget for the 2023 calendar year. And so we'll be looking at the steps and the competitive nature in the surrounding communities. As you know, a lot of communities are taking other people's employees. We actually did it ourselves, you know, so we're trying to retain them by having the competitive nature. And we won't always be the highest, but we want to be in the playing field. And so.
I understand that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I just want to make sure that we are, how do I
Being
want
fair
to
to the-
say, being fair to our assistant chiefs for the job well done that they do as well. So I just wanted to bring that up to make sure that we are making it very competitive, so they don't want to leave either.
You know, yeah, that's what I said, we will be looking at each of the different positions and coming up to the standard that our territory is representing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mayor. Council, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 163, 2022 as ordinance 163, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Revising the pay range for the positions of police chief and fire chief and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance 163 of 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Second by Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Ms. Evans, will you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 163, 2022 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Also, we're going to go a little bit out of turn here, and I'm going to return this back to the mayor for the mayor's report for an appointment that he would like to make after passing this ordinance. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President and council. Now we're back to that appointment to fire chief. And this is something that especially Mr. Beasley and I, and since Mr. Major has gotten here as city administrator, we virtually spent countless hours on trying to make the best with all parties involved to make this appointment a welcoming one. Not only welcoming to the chief, but to each of the departments. We know we've suffered some uneasiness in our fire department, and it's time we take steps to pull our fire department together. We believe we have a good fire department, and we get the direction everybody on the same order, that we can really accomplish some really nice things. And it took a lot of time, and sometimes people didn't know why we took certain steps, but it's just a changing world out there of how you hire somebody and who's willing to apply and how hard it is to find quality individuals out there that are willing to come, especially under circumstances of an at-will position. Some people are in the drop program. They could take a position like this and be eliminated and lose fortunes. So it is a really serious step for people to take an at-will position, especially when fire departments are really uncharted waters right now, especially ones that are non-full-time departments. Mr. Clayton O'Brien is going to be the one I recommend for an appointment to this position. After nearly a year and a half of a search looking for individuals, as Chief Denny Hartman had made it apparent to us that a couple years ago, he would be retiring in the next 2 years. It ended up being, he announced December 2nd as his retirement date. So at that time, Mr. Beasley and I, nearly a year and a half ago, started a search because we knew this wasn't something that would happen overnight. So, and with all the things we had to deal with, and like I said, a paid on-call fire department mixed with some part-time scheduled people and some full-time employees, it's really uncharted waters. There are municipalities going to systems like this, but everybody's looking at each other to see how their systems are working. And we knew we had to do something and get our fire department in everybody on the same direction. After talking to many individuals, when we spoke with Clayton O'Brien, it was a new experience for us. We just felt very enthusiastically excited. Kathleen Pauloff, who is our chairman of the safety committee, she met with him too, and she said, I have the same feeling. Tried to get the different unions, the full-time and part-time members to look, and they knew this is going to be a challenge, but at the midnight hour, I believe everyone's on board. If somebody's not, I'd like to hear from them. So we are very excited here after the interviews, council people talking to Clayton O'Brien. We're really looking forward to the future. We'll have a new fire station, a new chief, new excitement, new direction, and we're looking for really good things. So at this time, I'm going to ask for council's concurrence in the appointment of Mr. Clayton O'Brien of 119 Edgewood Street, Delta, Ohio, to the position of fire chief. The startup date will be November 28th, 2022. The annual salary, $116,004. Once again, I'll ask concurrence. Clayton O'Brien comes to our city excited. He's already been looking for property, possibly in Eagles Landing. He's an avid golfer. I've seen him out in I live in Eagles Landing, been looking to relocate here. His daughter happens to be a senior this year, so he's going to have to maintain his residency for her so she can graduate from high school. Otherwise, she might be one unhappy daughter. So we respect that. He is avidly looking, as was, Joel Mazer here, our city administrator, comes from Napoleon, where Clayton O'Brien is currently chief. Joel was very excited to move here. He immediately started looking for a house. He has purchased a house. He has occupancy in the house on Blanche Street, right on the lake, and he's excited to be here. And that did not take him long, as I expect Clayton will be here very quickly. So once again, I'd ask council's concurrence to the appointment. Mr. Clayton O'Brien, effective November 28th, 2022. And I'd look for your concurrence.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Paula.
I move to concur with the mayor's appointment of Mr. Clayton O'Brien as the City of Oregon's next fire chief, effective November 28th, 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Smalla.
Mr. President,
Mr.
can I
Drake?
make a comment? Kind of what the mayor said. I've been on council since December, and this has been the biggest issue I've had to deal with. I've talked to both sides, the part-time, talked to only one full-time. There's a lot of new ones I don't know. And in the last 24 hours, I've been on the phone a lot. The mayor's right. I think we had issues when I first came in. I tried bringing both sides together, but there was some issues going on and it wasn't a good time to talk about it. There may have been grievance or something that I have nothing to do with. And they did assure me that they were good with the mayor's appointment. And Mike and I might not always get along, but he's kind of like me. He's good at judging people, so I take his word on it. Thank you.
Mr. Drake, is that a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Council, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, Mr. Mayor, council does concur with you on hiring Mr. Clayton O'Brien as our next police chief, or fire chief, I'm sorry.
Unless you want to be bold. Clayton is here in the front row. Clayton, if we'd love to, I'm sure these people here would love to hear from you. You either speak from where you're comfortable at the lectern or wherever.
Well, first I'd like to say I'm very honored and privileged to have this opportunity to be the next fire chief for the city of Oregon. When this opportunity arises, I know I've heard a lot of things about this great city, but I've also heard in my world a lot of things about all the men and women that sit out here today, both on the full-time, both on the part-time. And why it makes me so excited is that I feel that the only thing that you can ever do positively as one is by having cohesiveness and being able to be motivated and actually get back to what we're all doing it for. So that makes me excited about being a part of Oregon, because I've heard many great things about all the staff at the fire department. So I've had the privilege to know all three of the command staff, Chief Denny Hartman and Assistant Chief Mark Mullins and Deputy Chief Jim Wolf for many years. So they, it's nice to be able to build upon what's already been built here and be able to bring a breath of fresh air, to the environment and create a culture. What I'm always very passionate about is creating a culture that everybody wants to be around. So I really look forward to working with each one of you, men and women, both of all the staff. Looking out in the room, I don't know who's all the staff of the fire department, but I would imagine just by looking out in the room of having this many people that says something about the department. So it says about their commitment to the department, their commitment to wanting to make a good department and help advance this together as a whole. So I truly, truly do appreciate this opportunity. I'm very honored to be in this position and be given this opportunity. And I look forward to the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Congratulations.
Thank you, Tim.
One thing, if you are on the golf course at Eagles Landing and you're on hole number 6, take it easy.
I could probably make the corner though.
Yeah.
I do have a long drive, so I mean, I can probably make.
I've never landed in his yard. You'll never land in his yard.
All right.
I got 2 broken windows at the current time.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I'll mention to the firefighters that are here right now, if you don't want to stay for the rest of the boring meeting, you can leave now if you want, or you can stay. It's up to you.
It looks like
Yes, they run for the door.
Come on, you don't hear about sanitary sewers?
Who's the guy? Talking to Ken on that.
Mario, see him.
Rizzo?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, council, we will move on back on track here to item 160-2022, which is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Acting Finance Director Nick Roman. Nick, did you have something to say first?
Yeah, thanks, Mr.
Go ahead.
President. I'll just say that this ordinance is for the renewal of our liability insurance through the Ohio Plan Pool. It's administered through Highland Services. We've experienced really consistently good service through the Ohio Plan since 2004. The premium is $231,914 for this renewal period. That's an increase of $19,000 from last year. The primary reasons for this increase are the replacement property values, and then we are constantly adding vehicles to our plan, which over time just increases the cost with vehicles costs going up. And then overall inflation is also a contributing factor. Lori Manning's here from Highland, if you have any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman.
Hello.
Thank you, Lori.
Good evening. Do you guys have any questions? Anything? I wanted to just share one thing, that we have some good news. You may have, noticed in the news or, personally experienced the fact that cyber breaches are on the rise, and they're really like 300% up this year. And so premiums are sometimes up to 50% more, and coverage is difficult to secure. However, our board of directors just got our renewal completed for the whole next year for 2023. And there was a $500,000 increase, and they decided to pay it. So it will not be passed on to our membership, which is really great news. So we're really happy about that. If you are in business or, personally need that kind of insurance, you would know that it is really difficult to get and it's very expensive. So a great kind of advantage of being a part of the Ohio Plan. So just wanted to let you know about that.
Thank you, Lori. I think we've all been happy with the service that we've gotten throughout the years. It's like I said earlier, it just seems like you were just here like last month, but.
No. It definitely goes faster.
So the increase that we're looking at this year, how does that compare to increases we've seen in years past? Is this much more than we've seen?
It's a little bit more than you've seen, yes. And mainly because property values, or I guess I should say replacement cost for property is up so much. You probably, see how much it is to go purchase any kind of material or hire any labor. So in order for us to replace your buildings in the event of a claim, it's going to take a lot more money than it took last year. So we did a mandatory inflation increase to get your per square foot price to an appropriate level. That was really a significant portion of what you're paying as far as the $19,000. And then the rest is just vehicles. The Ohio Plan is extremely stable. We don't really have rate increases unless you have and I think I've mentioned this before, the only time we have a true rate increase is when you have a lot of lawsuits going on. Like let's say there's a lot of, significant repetitive problems. And then sometimes an underwriter will say, we have to charge more. But we are nonprofit. So that situation has to get dire before we charge more. We just have to make enough money to be responsible. And have have responsible underwriting and be able to give the resources back to our members. So that's another pretty big advantage. But it really is just your exposures. You're growing, you're buying more vehicles. We have to be able to replace your property. So, and it might not happen next year. We might see a little correction, I hope, in inflation. This was a big year for everybody. All of my clients and my schools. They all have to pay more in case they lose a building.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions for Ms. Manning? Hearing none. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Hearing no questions, I will assign item 160-2022 as ordinance 160-2022 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Authorizing the renewal of the Ohio Plan Insurance Pool coverage as administered by Highland Administrative Services LLC, 811 Madison Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, for property and liability insurance coverage, general liability, employer's liability, employee benefits liability, law enforcement officers liability, public officials liability, automobile, property, special property, electronic equipment, media, crime, boiler and machinery, and excess liability insurance in an initial premium amount of $231,914 in premium adjustments for additions and deletions and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Wallensack.
thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for passage of ordinance number 160 of 2022 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Wallensack.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock?
yes,
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes. Thank you, council. Ordinance 160, 2022 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item up for consideration is item 161, 2022, presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Acting City Administrator Paul Roman.
We're to take away.
Take 'em
the-
over that.
Yeah.
I'll be the public service.
I think we'll be back to normal.
Yeah.
Mr. Roman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is to enter into a sewer lining contract with Performance Pipelining for various sewer sections in Oregon. Actually, there's a map and a description of the areas where the work is being done. But Performance Pipeline was the sole bid for the bids received. But they are an excellent company. They have successfully completed 3 out of the last 4 projects in the city. I know their last project was just completed up in South Shore Park. And so anyways, we certainly recommend them for the award. And, you know, I'd say again, the scope of work is in the Exhibit A. Probably the most difficult work is the sewer on Navarre Avenue. It's a 24-inch line. We're actually lining one section that's under I-280, which is a lot of work. And there is some deep cleaning. Some of these sewers are 35 feet deep, too deep for our equipment to perform. So a lot of that gets done right before you line it. That's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions. This project was included in our budget as well. So.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions regarding item 161?
President Zale.
Mr. Wallensack.
Thank you, Mr. Zale. When would the project get started? Would it still be before the calendar year is over, or is it going to be in the spring?
It'll be all through Mr. President, Mr. Wallensack, through the next 6 months.
Through the next. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Wallensack.
Mr.
Council,
Zale.
any-
Council
Mr.
President
Drake.
Zell.
Mr. Drake.
Mr. Roman, is it the same company that did like where Patchen Road area crashes? Remember they went through?
We did a traditional sewer placement in 1 year in that Crescents Heights area.
Mhm.
But Performance Pipeline have done 3 projects. I know they did Mound View, they did the area up in South Shore Park. It may have included Patchen.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Council, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 161, 2022 as ordinance 161, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Accepting the bid of Performance Pipelining Incorporated, 1551 West Norris Drive, Ottawa, Illinois, for furnishing labor, materials, and equipment for the sanitary sewer rehabilitation project, trunk sewer, and miscellaneous lateral improvements. Authorizing the mayor, director of public service, and finance director to enter into a contract with said contractor and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance 161 of 2022.
Thank you, Mr.
Declaring emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Drake. Ms. Evans, you take a roll call vote of council.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock?
yes,
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 161, 2022 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item, which is also presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Civil Service Director Paul Roman.
Civil service. It's okay.
Moving up. You're moving up.
Item 162, I will defer to Mr. Roman.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. And so this ordinance is needed to enter into what's called a local public agency LPA agreement with ODOT. It is to receive funding for the Munding and Dearborn Improvement Project. We are actually placing those roads. Those are service roads along 280 between Navarre and Wheeling Street. The city did obtain a $400,000 grant from Federal Highway Administration. We also received another $300,000 grant from the Ohio Public Works Commission. And, but this agreement is for the ODOT grant portion. If you look through an LPA agreement, it's very long, but it basically lays out all the responsibilities of the city as well as ODOT. And a lot of it is just to make sure we follow all state and federal rules for our project. And we are planning to bid this project in February of 2023, and we will be working on it all throughout next summer and fall. So I'd be, again, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions for Mr. Roman regarding item 162? Hearing none, I will assign item 162, 2022 as ordinance 162, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for funding from the Federal Highway Administration for the engineering, design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction of the LUC CR 563/564.40.65 Munding Drive and Dearborn Avenue reconstruction, PID 111524, and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance 162 of 2022 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second,
Second by Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll call vote of council on item 162?
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Powell?
yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzeck?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 162, 2022 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays, and this will complete our agenda items for this evening. And I'll move to the mayor's report if you want to. Do you have anything else to give, Mr. Mayor?
No, but I do really appreciate council support and the patience during the fire chief hiring process. I know sometimes it appears that it's secretive, but it was the only way I found to pull something like this off. It's very, very difficult times when you're going. I tried to get the information to you as soon as absolutely possible, but we didn't secure the deal till the midnight hours, and so I do really appreciate your patience, and I thank you again. And that would conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Major.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to say congratulations to Clayton, even though he's not here. I want to echo what the mayor said. Thank you all for supporting Chief O'Brien. I'm not Mr. Popular in Napoleon right now, so that's probably an understatement. But I don't think Oregon's a lot different from a lot of other communities around the nation in that knowing that run volumes are up. That is something that Clayton and I both worked on when we were in Napoleon, and were able to successfully address some of the similar issues that they had there. So today was my first day. It was a great first day and one of many to come. Everyone's been really pleasant. Everybody in council, thank you for your support. Staff, all the way on down and externally too. So my three priorities right now are going to keep meeting people, introducing myself, get to know the community better. I think a very important thing is to work with Nick for very long hours on getting this budget together. So we'll be spending a lot of time together, and to be a voracious reader, I think is important too. So just keep reading and as much as I can and getting to know people. As the mayor mentioned, I did close on a house, and I'm hoping to close on our house in Napoleon here in a couple of weeks. Hopefully that happens. One of the things that I'll be doing, and I think Clayton's going to join me, is we'll be joining the Oregon Rotary Club. So I don't know if anybody else is a Rotarian, but we'll be planning on doing that. And I'm just looking forward to continuing working with everybody. So thank you all again for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Major. Ms. Pepora.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Pepora. Mr. Roman.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder of our Parks and Recreation Committee meeting our next regular meeting on the 24th, I believe it is, at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Drake.
No report. I just want to say something. Last night, we had a main line break on the street I live on. The water department got there quick, did a great job. Paul, just for the record, you know, they work like dogs, and I know last contract, we were able to get them a $3 an hour raise, but it'd be nice if they could get more, so next negotiations, maybe we can figure that out with the union. That's it, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Mr. Wallenczak.
I have no report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenczak. Mr. Davish.
No report, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Pauloff.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Mr. Horniak.
No report from my standing committee. Would like to just ask a question. I'm kind of putting Mr. Roman on the spot, but if we can just get an update on how we're progressing at Navarre and Coy. From the layman's eye, it looks like we're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
What are we seeing, feeling about the project development?
Yeah, and well, Mr. President, Mr. Horniak, you know, the project is going well. And I think as you drive through, sometimes it's hard to see everything that's ongoing, but right now they're closing Wash Ditch and doing the bridge replacement on Coy Road. And one of the delays of the project was simply waiting for the box culverts to come in. But we're hoping here in the next 4 to 5 weeks, they're going to have that road put back. And we're hoping by mid-November, certainly by the end of the year. Now, we still are waiting for traffic lights. That's a problem with supplies. And we'll have temporary lights getting us by until we get them. They're, as you see it ongoing, they're doing the meetings now. They've switched the traffic. And thank God the South Leg is open now. So that helps a little bit. That's what's at. We're planning to have everything done by the end of the year. Is probably the best report that I can give. But I think we're doing well. So we hope to have everything done, at least before the snow plows. So,
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Roman.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Roman. That's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
President, Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I forgot something that I was meaning to bring up, so please.
Sure. Go ahead.
That being said, the tragic incident that we had at BP, I've had some citizens call me and talk to me in my neighborhood that were complaining about the excessive smoke that came from that fire. That and then it started to rain. That came down, and some with some health issues with breathing. They were wondering if in the future, if something like that happens, we can put out some kind of
An alert?
news report or a bulletin or something like that, or reach out to people to have them close their windows when something, God forbid it ever happens again. But there were some people that suffered very traumatically with their breathing. I know it's minute compared to what happened to the two individuals, but with that being said, we could talk with BP about something like that, or even our Toledo refinery, if it happens in their area, because the wind shifted, then the rain came down, and people were complaining about the breathing.
We can introduce to our call alert system with that. I think things happen so fast, and we weren't aware of where things were happening. We didn't know all things, but we'll be more conscious of that.
They understand that.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, they do understand that there was important things, more important things that were happening at the time, but maybe just close your windows and shut your.
And we can put that on our call system.
I would so greatly appreciate it. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no report from a standing committee, but I did want to address this. We've kind of lacked having committee of the whole meetings, and I think this originated during our COVID period, where we weren't having active or meetings personally together and that kind of thing. So what I would just like to ask the department heads and council members to maybe be a little more conscious about the fact that if you're writing some legislation, if it's possible, try to get it in for a committee of the whole. It doesn't mean we have to have a committee of the whole meeting every other week, because, truthfully, a large part of those are issues we've already do annually or we've budgeted for. And it doesn't really stimulate a lot of discussion. We all know what it is. But just to, if there's anything of any complication or anything that we think we might want to discuss more, and I think department heads will know what that is. And so will council members. Let's please try to be a little more conscientious about getting our legislation for a committee of the whole meeting. So we don't feel like we need to have a special committee meeting before a meeting to discuss something that is on the agenda. And that's all I have.
I do have one other thing.
Go ahead.
In the appointment of pay scales here, I did mention that the fire chief and the police chief would be starting at step 1 of pay range 47. But Melissa said out of clarity, we'll mention Chief Brandon Began would be also at step 1 of pay range 47, $116,000.04. So it's now officially said. We like to be completely transparent here. Anything else? Is that good?
Yeah.
Starting October 11th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Wait a minute, wait.
Brandon's would, yeah, start,
Huh?
Brandon's would start October 11th.
Okay, all right, effective
And-
October 11th, which is starting tomorrow. Congratulations, chief.
Lunch.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
I don't think this.
Mr. Drake.
Tim, or Mr. President, I got a question. If we don't have a committee of the whole meeting, like, use an example today, if somebody wouldn't have wanted the police chief, a citizen, didn't want to give him a raise, would they be allowed, or what would be the action needed to happen for them to speak out and say against it or for it?
Well, the function of the committee of the whole, Mr. Drake, is really so we can actually see the legislation before it. There's no really legislative action that we can take in a committee of the whole meeting. So it's really more of a meeting. So if you want to discuss the legislation that's oncoming for the following week, and the following week can actually include legislation that didn't come up to the committee of the whole. That can actually happen too. The idea is that we have more time to discuss it, especially if it's a complicated issue and we get that all ironed out. A little easier. And as you know, with the committee of the whole meetings, council members are not even required to be at one because there is no legislative action that was taken. But I just think we've got a little lax on having them. And I use an example where I get notified that we absolutely have nothing for the agenda, so I cancel a committee of the whole meeting. And then we come into a meeting the next week and there's 13 items. So, I mean, and they were pretty minor for the most part, but still, I think we should adjust that just a little bit better.
Okay, Tim, maybe I screwed up the way I asked the question. If somebody would have wanted to come, a citizen wanted to come up tonight and speak for or against his raise.
That would have been in a council meeting, not at a committee of the whole meeting.
Right, but as it stands right now, they speak at the end of the meeting. But if they wanted to speak about an issue that's an item that's being talked about, how would they go about doing it? Just ask you for permission to speak for it or against it?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. That is correct. That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Drake. That does conclude committee reports. Council, any other things to add to any of the committee reports? Hearing none. We do have 2 people signed in to speak for council tonight. Ms. Ackerman, would you please approach the lectern? State your name and address for the record, please.
Beth Ackerman, 931 Berry Road. I'll try to make this quick. I from time to time, I'll check on the Oregon Economic Development website or the Regional Growth Partnership website. And since we farm a lot of ground that has been up for development, and I noticed on RGP, and then I checked it on the OEDF site, that in the Blue Heron Industrial Park. And I'm thinking maybe it just got mixed up but the owners, wanted it to be changed, that on the 40, I believe it's 43 acres on Corduroy. So you've got the Oregon Clean Energy Future Site for the second one. So directly south of that. It's listed as for sale by Bill, I'm gonna butcher this name. He's the Oregon Clean Energy guy, Cedrowitz. And it's got him as the owner and not the Gary Jolin family. So just kind of want to make sure you guys are on the ball with what you're listing and who actually owns it. And also, is it Mazur? I butchered it.
Mazer, like.
Mazer.
like
Okay,
laser,
okay,
yes.
sorry. So, I was wondering now if the Oregon Clean Energy Plant on their website, it says that that the city and our schools make millions off of it, but Mr. Beasley wasn't able. He said, I can't tell you how much that is, but I noticed that at their other, in one of the other clean energy plants in, it's over there in the eastern part of the state. Can't think of, it's where there's a big facility. Anyway, their schools, I mean, they're very specific, like they get uniforms and they get all these donations, they make a lot of money for their district and stuff. So I was wondering if, like we were talking about transparency, thank you for that, Mr. Zale, for clarifying about the committee of the whole, because I do think the public is like, well, you're voting and no one even knew it was a thing, so why would the public, if they're not aware of it? So that it'd be nice if the public's informed so that they could talk to their council people about, how they're feeling about whatever initiatives are coming up to be voted on in the regular meeting.
Well, the agenda is put out every week publicly.
Right, but it's not put out until the day before the meeting. But the committee of the whole
Usually
is.
on Fridays, yeah.
Well, yeah, you're right. So the committee of the whole is a chance for the public to say, oh, this is what they're considering spending money on, or who they're hiring, or what they're voting on. And then they could reach out to their council people or the mayor or you guys and express their feelings. So thank you for that. But yeah, I was just wondering if we could find out how many millions
Yeah.
the city and or the schools are receiving from. Since we're going to put in a second one, I assume that'll mean more millions.
Yeah.
So
Let's all hope.
yeah, well,
Right?
yeah. So anyway, the property to the south of that, I know that they are looking to sell it, but the owners want to make sure that it's listed correctly,
Yes, so if it's okay, I will, I'm meeting with Alec Thompson tomorrow, so I will mention to him about the sign.
Yeah, I told the
I'll-
owners, it's
I'll,
probably just a mistake but we want to make sure we know who owns what around here. so-
Yeah, right. And
Okay,
as part of my listening tour, I'm also going to be meeting with Bill Seidowitz at some point, so
okay.
hopefully we can.
And
make
he
an
also,
introduction.
I
And I know
see
Bill,
he's
I've
in
known,
Eagles Landing.
I knew him from a prior lifetime,
Mhm.
before they did the first Oregon Clean Energy Project.
Okay, well, I
There's
just,
some familiarity there.
yeah, just.
I would
just
respond to
keep
the
those-
school's share of that, Oregon Clean Energy One. They're just in excess of $1 million a year they get. The city of Oregon, gets the income tax from them, their profit. For several years, they will be depreciating that plant. So we won't see our $2.25 million a year until the time comes when they depreciate it or find a new way to
They should
divert that
update
money.
their website.
Huh?
They should update their
Yeah,
website.
yeah, so
And-
we're looking for the end of their depreciation.
The last,
They make about $100 million a year.
they do.
And so that would, if you
That
do the
would be-
math, that's
yeah.
$2.25 million we would get a year. But when they depreciate that and to 100%, we don't get a lot. But that day will supposedly come.
And they get a deal on water too.
What's that?
They get a substantial savings on their water that they use to.
They purchase a lot of water.
Yeah.
And that's a much lower rate than we pay for
Right.
potable. It's not treated. And they bill, excuse me, they pay for the pumping system and deliveries that we provide. But they do pay full rates on sewer. Our sewer revenues are around $500,000. So
And you're expanding the water plant to accommodate the second? Is that a rumor?
We'll see if you,
That's what I'm
Well,
asking
well,
for
what I would say is,
clarification.
Mr. Roman's starting the process to double the size of that plant. 60 million gallons, it'll go to 32 million gallons. They currently get the water from Toledo. At any time we have the capacity, we will end up selling them the water.
we have, just so you know, so we have designed a water line going down York Street from Toledo plant. That is paid for by the Cedar, it's a city cost. And that is waiting for that second power plant. Toledo will provide that. However, if we expand, we can switch over to Oregon water. So if
Okay.
we expand.
Okay,
And I think we need to plan the expansion as well.
Okay, just trying to see what's rumor and what's fact. So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Camphammer. Name and address for the record, please.
PJ Camphammer, 3646 Navarre Avenue, Oregon, Ohio. I can add to that answer too, because I think I was the one that signed the deal with Clean Energy. It's $1 million a year, but it's a limit, 10 years. I think Oregon's about done with that deal. So it's $1 million, little north of $1 million for 10 years. So and I'm pretty certain they're real close to spending it all. It's gone. So anyways, I just want to come up here. You know, you get a lot of misinformation on Facebook and the internet, and the last one was almost comical to me, but the new one is that city council and the mayor is, even though TARTA raised the sales tax to include all of Lucas County, which actually brought us into play with TARTA. What the new rumor is, even though we're paying the new sales tax, the mayor and city council is making sure TARTA can't come into the city of Oregon, which seems comical at best. And I did make a couple phone calls to some council people and the mayor, and I know that not to be the case. I mean, it was almost embarrassing to make the call, but could you guys maybe explain it a little bit so people understand why TARTA's here now, how it happened, and if the city's actually, I don't think any of you have the power to stop TARTA if you wanted to, but can you explain if the city's blocking TARTA from the residents using it?
I will start. I think Mr. Roman will kick in. I know where they got that concept. There's a group out there that'll try anything they can to make me look bad. So I'm aware of that. But they said that I deliberately keep them out. What they're really referring to, or what I believe they're referring to, is prior to when TARTA came to us and asked if we wanted to opt into their TARTA service. I believe the polling we took from our city, the residents strongly said no. So we just opted out of joining TARTA. And that's when they chose to take the next route of doing a levy throughout the whole county to include us without our permission. And at that time, when we were included, we are still negotiating on how they will provide service and trying to get the fairest deal we can for the money we pay. I think Mr. Roman probably.
We've met with officials from TARTA, and they are working out. One thing that's difficult about Oregon, I can tell you just from a civil engineering perspective, there's not sidewalks everywhere. So just to get to a bus stop, the main corridors, state routes, Woodville, Lamar, we've met once. They also offer multiple services, and they are going to bring it in to Oregon. It is coming to Oregon. It's all new officials laying out the whole system, and that's what they're working on. I think in the next so many months, they're going to be coming back and saying, this is the things we're going to offer and provide. But I think in areas where you don't have sidewalks, I don't know how far you go, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I fully understand.
But they're going to have a full list of services like they offer Toledo and everywhere else.
I was just making sure on the record that you, Paul, you're not calling TARTA and telling them that the mayor wants you not to come in. I knew.
We were doing the opposite. We were saying we want our just due.
Yeah, if we're paying for it, we want it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caphammer. With nobody else signed in to speak, I will seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Are there any objections? Hearing none, council is adjourned.
Yeah, mine didn't work.
I caught you at the last minute, Keith.